All right, yes. So me, my name is Anton, originally from Vladivostok and currently working in Estonia as a full stack developer and tech lead at Target. And at Target, we built our projects with Django web framework, and in this talk, most of the examples will be related to Django, but don't be afraid. The concepts behind them are pretty universal. And a small disclaimer, I'm not a security expert, but just a regular software developer who decided to invest time into learning about security and share my knowledge. So we will start with a small intro. Why security? Why should we talk about it? Misconceptions around it, a bit of terminology, because yeah, security is a topic that contains a lot of terms. And the main part of the talk is tailored around checklist of 10 steps. And I set them in the order of easy to implement to more creative and fun topics. I also wanted to mention the scope of this talk. Mostly I will be talking about tools and security mindset and common vulnerabilities. Yes, and I won't be talking about phishing, cryptography, or hardware security. So to answer the question, why security? If anyone can write down in chat what big data leaks do you know that happened this year? I will wait for a few seconds and show that in this year we have 62 of them, and the numbers of leaked data is pretty big. It counts like millions of accounts information stolen, and it's hard to imagine numbers. And as you can see, social media leaks data, banks leaks data, even your local gym probably leaks data. Everyone does it. And yeah, security is a topic that needs to be reminded every now and then. So that's why I'm today wanted to talk about this topic. And my goal with this talk to raise awareness and show some easy to follow steps that you can implement to make your applications more secure. And even if a few people after this talk will start using these steps to improve security of their project, it's already a huge win for safer applications. So let's talk about what is security and misconceptions around it. First and most important misconception is that 100% secure application exists, but it's like a unicorn, a mythical animal. In theory, we can talk about fully secure applications, but in reality, everything is mostly broken. And this out of the way, I wanted to mention a few more topics that I would like to talk about. Second misconception is that security is only for job for security experts. But in reality, it's a shared responsibility. And some examples: does staff, sales, marketing needs to do anything to make your application secure? Well, does developers doesn't need to bother about security and just write code? Can we talk about security without security audits in mind? And how we can lower security risks from the start? In the end of the day, it is everyone's job, and we all play a role in making the applications more secure. Another misconception that security is too complex to learn about. And yes, it is hard to learn about, especially cryptography. But at the same time, there are basic steps to follow that will make your web application better protected. Because like in experience, attackers looking for easy target. And if you put some effort and thought about security, it makes a huge difference. Last misconception about frameworks, and that frameworks will protect you from everything, and especially it is related to Django, because Django has a reputation of a very secure framework. And basically, yes, your framework of choice most likely will protect you on the start, but as application logic grows, developers will introduce more vulnerabilities and bugs into the code, and there will be less and less help from the framework itself. So that was about misconceptions, and a bit about terminology. First, I would mention OWASP. This is a non-profit organization that publishes each year top 10 vulnerabilities found in web applications. And I think every talk about security on every conference will mention this in some way. And in my slides, you will see mentions of one of the 10 vulnerabilities on some of the slides. Then a malicious user, it's basically an internal user, someone inside the organization who knows knows a bit of how to break stuff. And vulnerability is a weakness in the system that malicious user or hacker is using. And lastly, pen testing. This is an activity that security experts do to test your application against common vulnerabilities. And with that, we now can look at the things as we as developers can do to make our application more secure. On this slide, you see a 10-step checklist. And first item maybe seems even too easy, like it's 2020 and browsers will show you this lock under the address bar to indicate you that the site is secure and you should trust it. But there is a hint in the animation. If part of the application is using insecure HTTP connection to load, for example, images or JavaScript, you can't say that the site is using a secure connection, because the resources requested via insecure connection can be modified and replaced by hacker. For example, if they listen to the public Wi-Fi, and this is called a man-in-the-middle attack, and it's shown in the picture. And in the picture, this attacker spoofing certificate, and imagine if they doesn't need to spoof anything. But if we already have a valid TLS certificate, what else we need to check to ensure that our application truly uses secure connection? Well, there is a few things. First, we need to ensure that certificate is not expired. It's a very common thing that when certificate is expired and for a few days, site is vulnerable. Next, we can ensure that load balancer or proxy serving all requests via secure connection. And the last 2 points is about FTP and third-party API connections. And it is important to mention them because even if application outside application level security level is pretty good, if part of it inside still using insecure components like FTP or third-party API that doesn't use secure connection, you can't say that your application is secure. So let's talk about configuration. It's also seems like an obvious thing to do, but it is listed in top 10 vulnerabilities for many years. So that's why it is pretty important topic to talk about. And here you can see that it listed almost like 2 times. I also put here insufficient logging and monitoring because in my mind it is connected to configuration. And insufficient logging means that your system was not configured to alert you about any suspicious activities. In other words, you won't know when you've been hacked. And talking about misconfiguration, on the screenshot, you can see a Django debug page. It is intended for local development and expose a lot of data. It helps debugging, but if you leave it this option on the production and attacker can see this page, it's a very bad thing. So How can we fix it? There is a lot of tools, and one of the simplest one, and what is, for example, Django provides us out of the box is a deploy check. And on the screenshot, you can see output of this check. With this command, Django will run a set of security checks and report you with some settings that you need to pay attention to make your application more secure before you deploy it. But configuring software is a big topic, and I can't fit into this presentation. And the only advice here is to check that software configured and read all the settings that software provides you. Next one is also seems like an obvious things to do, to be careful with your secrets. And here's an example. I searched for this secret key keyword in GitHub and found 2.5 million of results. Some of them are using secure version, but some of them not. They just committed to the version control system, and it is just for secret key keyword, but we also can leak passwords to the email providers or API keys to third-party services. And if we check our project and find out that the secret key to access our, for example, email provider committed to the repository, what will be our next steps? Well, in short, we need to invalidate it as soon as possible. We can do that by creating a new one, storing it securely. With Django, we can use Django environment package and redeploy it so the key cannot be longer used. And there is some automatic tools that can help you with finding if you're committing some secrets to the repository. So next topic is application dependencies. And yes, another picture, and I can confirm as a developer myself, that's how we write software. A bit of documentation, a bug here, a bug there, a few vulnerabilities, because libraries written by people and people make mistakes or do intentionally bad things. There was a recent case with a node package that was stealing personal data. It was removed fast, but still it's an indication that still some developers try to do some malicious thing with the library. And but what more important in that developers of libraries often release a patched version that fix some vulnerabilities, and it's important to upgrade to this version, and it is the responsibility of a developer to check software versions often. And again, there is a lot of automatic tools that can help you with that. One of the tools is Python safety package. And here we can see the full report of it. It can not only show insecure versions, but also a short explanation what was the vulnerability and how it was fixed. And we can see here that it even mentioned some numeric template in filters in Django that can consume a lot of application memory. And this can be used for denial of service attack. And intent of denial of service attack, or known as DOS, is to temporarily or permanently make application unavailable for users. So this check for vulnerable versions of your dependencies can be set up to run each time you push changes to the repository, or even better, if it is a part of your continuous integration. And next step is to see how we can make it harder for the attacker to guess about our application. And it is a bit related to the default values in the software. For example, can you guess the admin login page for the site secretbase.com? Well, it might be just admin and that's it. Or can you guess the admin email for that login page? It might be that it's just admin at secretbase.com. This happens. And sometimes guessing is not hard at all. And let's look at the next slide, how we can improve the situation a little bit. But keep in mind that this is not to stop the attack, but rather to make exploring our application harder. So how can we make our application less predictable? At least we can change the admin URL. Changing the admin URL can really make a long difference, because most automatic tools that scans for admin URLs using a predefined dictionary of keywords that they're using to find out this login page to the dashboard. And if you are a bit harder target by changing the admin URL, you should change it. And we talked about the configuration of the application, and I mentioned some tools. So next two steps is about the tools. And first, we will be talking about tools that are already available to us, but we might not know about them. For example, Django comes with a lot of tools out of the box, and you as a developer just need to be aware of them and use. And here are some examples that I found, and I didn't knew about all of them, but maybe half of them. And some of the utility functions are not even mentioned in the official documentation. But since Django is open source, you can and should look into the source code and see if there are some helper functions that can help you. And with that, we can now look at powerful tools that can destroy your illusion about application that it is secure. And they might be harder to install in the some workspaces, but definitely make our life easier. And the first and big one that I want to mention is OWASP ZAP. It's kind of written down a bit hard to understand, but basically this is a special software that can open a browser that connected to the software, and you can explore your application, and by that way OWASP ZAP will learn about it, and the next step it can run a lot of spiders to collect all the URLs of your site, all the information about all your forms, and try to post in all your forms like all kinds of bad input. And this is a pretty good tool, and sometimes it can be even used in the CI, and it can learn about application during integrational tests and then run in attack mode to try to break your application. Another nice tool is PyCharm Python security plugin. This is an all-purpose plugin. It's not related to only web development, but it's nice that you can install it in your IDE, for, in this case, PyCharm, and it will notify you about a lot of vulnerabilities on your project start. And there is also other tools, but I will skip them for now. And now let's talk about user input. And we will start with two famous vulnerabilities that share this common theme. Here I'm mentioning like 4 vulnerabilities that listed in top 10, and they all related to the user input. We will talk about 2 of them, injection and cross-site scripting. But the other ones is XML external entities is related to user uploading XML that contain vulnerability and insecure deserialization is a vulnerability in deserialization process of how user input is processed inside your application. So talking about cross-site scripting, the story goes that there is a popular application, TweetDeck, and many people and celebrities use it to manage multiple Twitter accounts. And one day, one smart person tried to post a tweet with JavaScript code inside, and it worked. The Twitter client itself escaped all the code, but TweetDeck wasn't escaping. And at that time, if you saw the tweet in your timeline in TweetDeck, you would like and retweet this message without doing anything. And with this is what this small JavaScript code is doing. And after liking and retweeting by user behalf, the script would also create browser alert. And luckily that there was no malicious intent in this, just to notify TweetDeck about this vulnerability. And in the essence, cross-site scripting related to unsanitized user input on the client side of the application. And this attack is dangerous when the code that one user has submitted get executed for other users. And let's look a bit at examples. Here's example of using the safe filter on a dangerous HTML that user has posted as a comment under blog article. And we can fix it by removing the safe filter. And Django by default from version 1.0 will be escaping all special characters and nothing bad will happen. But what else we can do to prevent cross-site scripting? There is a few things that you should avoid using rich text editors that proceed HTML, but use Markdown instead. And you need to check your templates for this safe filter that in this case is exactly unsafe. And there's a new helper function that allow you to render JSON safely into the Django templates. And there is also some automatic tools that could help you to find out this cross-site scripting vulnerability in your application. And that was about the client side of the malicious user input. And let's look at more dangerous server side user input. And I couldn't resist to add this very famous comics about SQL injection. And it's weird that this attack exists for almost 20 years, and it's still #1 in OWASP top 10 each year, and most popular and most dangerous attack. And the threat here is that user with malicious intent can provide harmful input to the server, and with SQL injection, the server will execute the code on the database level. And it can result in destroying the database table, returning all the data, or modifying it. So what we can, I will show you a bit of examples of what we can do with it. And in this example, we see a dangerous user input that will return all rows from the table. And right now it passed dangerously because the string is formatted by us and we just provide it to Django. Django don't know if this code contains dangerous input or not. So we can fix it by passing user input as parameters. And that way, Django separately look at the code and look at the parameters and will put user input in a safe container and it won't be executed on the database level. What else we can do? Foremost, we can use Django ORM. Not only it makes code more readable, but it also protects us from this kind of errors out of the box. There is no need for extra step. But if using Django ORM is not possible, we can pass the user input as a parameters, and that will be totally fine. That way, it also will be sanitized and escaped by Django and the database. And 2 more steps and 5 minutes left. So can you write to the chat who's encrypting personal data in their applications? Well, and this guy looks like really confused. This would be me on some security audit. So user data got exposed a lot, and in this screenshot you can see API output that leaks all kind of data, and it not only can leak into the API response, but in the server itself. There was a recent breach when a spreadsheet on the server that contains 600 users' billing history information was just laying around an unprotected server in plain text. So protecting data is super important, and what can we keep in mind when working with it? In this code example, we see a declaration of how database model is converted to a Python data structure for the API response. And in this example, we see a lazy code. We're not specifying return data here, we're just telling framework to expose everything from the database. And in this example, we explicitly said which fields we would like to expose in the API, and it is much more safe way to do it. And I think that carefully deciding and explicitly enabling the data that got exposed is a key component here. And yes, a bit more points how data can be protected. And I would say that first point about deciding what data is exposed and saved is most crucial one in most of the cases, because most likely if we ask a customer, do we really need to store this data? The answer might be, no, we don't need. And we wanted to just save it just in case. And if you do need to save it, then you can encrypt it and mask it. And the last step is restricting access. And we talked about sensitive data, and this topic is tightly coupled with access control. It coupled in a way that having a good access control allow you to leak less data because you know who allowed to see and do what. And by that I mean that we sometimes check that user is authenticated, meaning that they have an account in our system and logged in, but never check that user is authorized to do some action. And this is most dangerous when some user can perform actions that only admin users should be able to do. So a bit of code examples in here. In here, we just checking that user as authenticated, and just right away doing a money transfer. And in this example, we added a check that most likely if the user is Al Capone, we shouldn't allow him to transfer any money. And a bit more things that we can do to make our application less broken with access control. In short, we can use user roles and check that allowed actions and test with different users. And again, all these 10 steps from easy to more hard one. But we forgot about one important step, and it's currently missing. So can you guess what it is? Well, it is step 0 to make it a regular activity. And you can start slow with small checklists like this one and scheduled 1 hour each month. And I believe that any client would agree to do that in exchange for a more secure application. So the last slides is what's next, what to research about next, because we talked about most common vulnerabilities and OWASP top 10s, but there is a lot of interesting things. And I think the most interesting one is JWT manipulation, because JWT has a reputation of very secure authentication protocol, but it's not. And yes, thank you all for coming today and listening to this talk. And here's a list of people that inspired me with their talk on various conferences. And also big thanks for my colleagues, Maris and Carl, for giving feedback about this talk. And questions.
Thank you. We have a few questions that are coming in, and I would just start asking you, starting from the first question. In what environment do you run security tests, dev tests live or all?
Can you repeat it?
In what environment do you run security tests?
Yes, I think it could be very harmful, especially if you're using OWASP ZAP as an attack proxy to mess up with your live data. But the best practice would be to have a dump of the live data with obfuscated data, so you can run tests on them and at the same time not exposing every sensitive data, in my opinion.
Have you done any white, black, gray hat hacking yourself?
Not really. I only started to research this and decided that I have enough information to share with the community as well.
What was your that is the thing? Why is that a thing related to security vulnerability or default behaviors?
Yeah, I think I was meant to say that it is related to configuring software, this predicting, because most of the time we have the default values, for example, for admin URL or for email address, and they just the default values that you need to change to so your application wouldn't be so predictable. Yeah, I hope that I answered it.
Okay. Do you know any good security scanners which are Django Flash specific?
I think it shouldn't be specific to Django, but a good one is OWASP app. And I would really encourage everyone to look at they have a list of very short videos how it works, and it's really powerful tool to use.
Okay.
And it also can run headlessly, so it's a perfect fit for CI integration.
Perfect. That's all the questions that we have.